Um,
Right. So, Aaron, do you want to,
Well, we kind of maybe Ross and Cory can introduce themselves, and then
and Ross?
I have a
Yep, sorry.
preamble. Yeah.
Ross, go ahead.
My name is Ross Vona. I'm a 1985 graduate of Belmont High School. In my 24th year as a Belmont firefighter, and I'm the president of Local 1637, the Belmont Firefighters.
And I think it's also worth adding that you are the only person from Belmont who testified in person and in writing on the state uh, committee that is studying civil service.
Thank you. Yes, Judith, thank you.
And Cory?
I'm Cory Taylor. I worked for the Belmont Police Department for a little over 20 years. I've been a police officer there for a little over 18, and I'm the president of the Belmont Police Patrolmen Association.
Thank you. So I have a little bit of a preamble to describe the session. I just wanted to say that the intent of this session is to provide additional information and perspectives on the prospects of Article 8, which asks town meeting members to consider withdrawing Belmont uniformed police from the state civil service program. The intent of this session is not to make an argument for or against the article, but provide more information that we hope will inform the debate we'll hold, the decision we'll make at special town meeting in November. This is not a time for speeches or arguments from town meeting members. The time for that is the town meeting. And just want to reflect, like Paul said, thank you for joining us to seek this additional information and perspectives as you consider your vote on this complicated and important matter. The agenda for the session is I'm going to provide an extremely brief summary of the article. I'm literally just going to show the motion. And then Cory and Ross will give us some statements in their perspective. And then we'll have most of the time reserved for Q&A from town meeting members on this call. So let me just briefly share my screen. We tested this before. Let's see if it works. This is the motion that we will consider. So I'm not going to read it. You can read it for yourselves. But as you can see, the fundamental part is the first bit, which is the town consider removing the police department from the provisions of the civil service laws. The rest is sort of technical details about which specific laws it pertains to. So I'll leave that there for a moment. And really, I guess now I'm happy to turn it over to Cory and Ross to provide the information they'd like to provide. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You want to go first? You want me to go first, Cory?
Yeah, I guess I'll start. So I'll keep my actually sort of brief so we can kind of leave most of it for just we can hopefully just answer a lot of the questions. So basically, there's been this motion to obviously take the police department out of civil service. This has kind of been many years in the making. As Chief McIsaac said, it's something he's been working on since he was brought in as the chief in 2020. He tried to do it, I can't remember, 2 or 3 years ago. And basically, it was pulled at the last minute, as pretty much everybody knows. The police unions and but both the superiors, I don't think we have anybody here from the superiors, but they're currently, just to kind of give you a little background on that real fast, they're currently actively in negotiation. So I'm not sure if they've actually signed or not yet. So they're kind of limited as what they can talk about. So I'm more or less talking just for my union right now, but there are a few things that I can kind of speak on their behalf for as well. Basically, our kind of stance on this is we're not necessarily saying that we are or are not for coming out, but we feel that without proper system in place, that it's not really worth something that we should be looking into or doing right now. Once you take us out of civil service, you're basically going to be competing with all the other surrounding towns that are already out of it. It basically, for lack of a better term, kind of makes it like almost like just a regular business. So you can have people that, you know, if you have a business, you're always your employees going to be competing to go to the the next level, the better paying company, and that's kind of what the police departments will become. Which isn't necessarily a good or a bad thing, but the problem is that if we're trying to actually attract employees, we have to be competitive with those other towns, and our feeling is that the town isn't really in a financial position to really do that right now. but the money the town has the money to actually bring us up to that level so that we would be in competition with some of the higher paid non-civil service departments. From a lot of the research that we've done, we would probably be somewhere, if we just came out right now, our pay would probably be somewhere on the middle to the lower end of the scale when it comes to the lower middle to the very lower end, the bottom of the barrel of the non-civil service departments that are around us. So those are a couple of reasons why we kind of think that now isn't really the time to do it. We're not saying that's something that we shouldn't do at all. It's just that it's not really a good time to do it for the town or for the departments. There isn't really a plan that the shown was that's been in place yet. And I know a lot of people have been asking about what the compensation would look like if we were to come out, and we haven't really seen any of those numbers yet either. So, thank you.
Great, thank you. So Ross.
Yes, thank you for everyone joining tonight. We appreciate any questions and so forth going forward. For me, shortly after the last time we went through this 3 years ago, the state legislature pulled together a special committee, the Public Service Committee, which is chaired by Rep. Ken Gordon in Bedford and Senator Mike Brady from Brockton. Were charged with looking at civil service. They had heard some complaints from some municipalities and even from those of us in, firefighters, police officers in civil service that there needed to be some changes. What they did from there was they set up a committee of 29 people, roughly half in support of trying to get out of civil service and the other half trying to advocate for making changes to civil service and keeping it going. They lasted roughly 14 months, these hearings. I participated in one, given oral and written testimony. I was on for all of the hearings, which lasted anywhere between an hour and a half and 4 hours on each one. The best thing about it was there was good conversation back and forth from both sides. That's the important part here. I think Cory and I, 3 years ago, told people that civil service was not perfect. Nothing is perfect. It was the best system for having an independent, non-biased third party overseeing the jobs of public safety and other civil service employees. At the end of the 14 months, the committee came together and they figured out a whole bunch of things that they would like to change. But two of the biggest ones that they heard from the municipalities that wanted to get out of civil service was timing, that they wanted things to be done quicker, and they also wanted a more diverse workforce. So what they did, for those of you that do not know, civil service was not a department that was funded by the state legislature. It was solely dependent upon exam monies that candidates like me and Cory, when we took the civil service exam, paid to the department. They kind of lived off of that. They got a small stipend from Human Resource Division, which civil service sits in the state. I think they got like $600,000 or $700,000, but that was it. So it was basically a cost neutral department. They depended upon examination. So the first thing that the state legislature did was they decided that civil service needed to be fully funded. So they sent a report in March of 2022, and for the 2023 state budget, they added over $4 million. I thought it was $4.2 million, but looking at the report that they sent, it was more closer to $4.8 million. And that was to help with the cost. They felt the cost of an exam for me, when I first started taking a test in 1997, I believe the cost was $25. Correct me if I'm wrong, Cory, $25 or $50. It was now like $250, and then they moved it back to $200. And it was a huge burden for people that were on the lower economic pay scale to afford to be able to take a civil service exam. So what they did was that they lowered it to $75, which as of today is lower than most of the towns that are out of civil service to have their own exam. Wellesley Fire Department just had their test for themselves. They're out of civil service, and it's $100. So they're lower than most of the towns that are out of civil service. The other part was recruiting. They wanted a better way of recruiting a diverse workforce. So of the $4+ million, I think, if I'm reading the state budget correctly, 1.5 million is going towards salaries to hire more staff to turn around tests quicker. And the other 2.5 is for other programs like diversity, fee waivers for people that may be on public assistance to be able to take a civil service exam, and do a lot of outreach. There are a lot of things that civil service does right now for departments that might not have as much trouble attracting candidates as Belmont. Towns like Somerville and Cambridge and Boston, that their pay scales are quite a bit higher than Belmont's. They use civil services, social media. They have civil service come out to church gatherings, town days, farmers markets, all these different things that they're helping communities do some recruitment. You just need to ask for their help. And I'm not sure that we have, as a town, really used civil service the way that we could. And I think in watching the warrant committee meeting the other night, where Chief McIsaac spoke, I think some people might have, there might have been some statements made that might need some clarification or might need some additional information. I think Mr. Epstein was right. He totally said what civil service does. It makes a test, it corrects an exam, it handles appeals, it does that. But other than that, there are no other restrictions that civil service puts on to any town or municipality. It's the town that puts any type of preference on there. The only rule that civil service has right now that they're looking to change is that you have to live in a community for a year prior to taking a test that you are using as a residential preference to get hired. That is the only one that they have. So in Belmont here for the fire department, we hire off a paramedic preference list, which means you need to be a paramedic, have a paramedic license. There's veterans preferences. There's all sorts of preferences that are put on that is done by the town, not by civil service. So I just wanted to be, I don't think people understood Mr. Epstein the other night when he laid it out, that exactly what civil service does and what they don't do. So I think there was some misinformation on a few different things the other night, and that's why we're here to answer any questions that you all may have. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Sorry, a little housekeeping.
Sorry, go ahead, Paul.
A little housekeeping. If you are not speaking, please mute your microphone just so we can keep the flow of conversation going. Thanks.
No, I mean, we're happy to open it up to questions now. Thank you so much, Cory and Ross, for the sort of baseline information, especially about the work that's going on at the state. All that stuff.
Aaron, can I say one more thing, Aaron? So this report that came from the state legislature, it has a whole bunch of suggestions. They just reconvened this committee a few weeks ago. Rep. Gordon and Mike Brady. Rep. Gordon has legislation in now waiting to be heard. They're hoping to get it voted on by December. 4 additional changes, different things that will address Chief McIsaac's issues with civil service, hopefully give him a bigger list And I'm not sure the town meeting members, I don't know if the select board has this report. I'm really not positive. It should be looked at because there are things there that would suffice for people, I believe, and they would get a better understanding and understand what's coming down the pipeline in the next 5, 6, 7, 8 months. That would, I think, would satisfy both sides of staying in civil service and having other benefits. They're addressing how big the lists are, different quotients to get that list, more fee waivers, everything that they have issue with civil service is going to be handled. And I might say, I think as much as of a hiring problem that everyone thinks we have, just so you know, I got sent this today. There's a study across all police departments across the United States, and I'll read it verbatim. It's actually in the report, that in 2020, there was 25% of the departments felt that they were understaffed. By 2022, that has tripled to 78% of the police departments across the United States feel that they are understaffed. They are understaffed. It's a huge issue across the country. It's not a Belmont problem. It's a problem everywhere. And other states are making efforts, like Florida. They offered a $5,000 sign-on bonus to anyone that moved to the state as a police officer. And just the other day, Alameda, California, which is a department of 88 sworn officers, has 24 openings. Their city council just gave their police chief the ability to offer a $75,000 bonus to any police officer that signed on, and he can't get anyone to take the job, and their average pay is $110,000. So this is a much bigger problem across the U.S. And for Belmont, getting rid of civil service is not going to help them hire any quicker, and it's certainly not going to help them diversify their department.
Might you also, Ross, be willing to speak to the question of what happens when there are disputes? You had said something very interesting about the problems with arbitration.
Yeah, so I know that was brought up that, that civil service won't cover the police officers because of the post commission. And I think Cory can talk on the post commission more, but the problem with arbitration is just the word itself. It's arbitrary. There is no transparency to the arbitration process. There is, if the arbiter makes
again, mute please.
If the arbiter does not interpret the law and makes a wrong decision, there's no recourse for the town or the employee. And there is a cost to arbitration. It's not it's going to cost the town money to go to arbitration. It's going to cost the employee time, money to go to arbitration, where civil service takes care of that in-house, so to speak. I will give you that from 2006 to 2021, there were 606 appeals for termination, any issues with any tests or discipline. And 80% of those cases, the Civil Service Commission upheld the municipality's side of the case. But what is astonishing out of all of that is the people that appealed to civil service, over 89% felt that they were treated fairly, with respect, and it was a fair judgment. And those are people that lost their case. So I don't think you're going to find a more independent, non-biased third party to take care of issues than you will with civil service.
I have many questions, as I always do, but I'll hold it to one. And it relates to what you were just talking about. We've heard a lot about the sort of hiring and the hiring list as a limitation and a pain point. And I think it's because I think it's a legitimate pain point the way things are right now. I guess, could you talk, in addition to that arbitration function, could you talk about just briefly some of the other functions that civil service provides, just so we understand, like, what else does it do that we wanted to replace it in the future? You know, if we were to withdraw, what would we need to replace?
Well, the biggest part of civil service is creating the test, giving the test, proctoring the test, and then formulating a list. They handle all appeals of any test questions, any testing procedures, anything that happened is all done through civil service. The town pays nothing for that service. It's I pay money for a test. It's a part of the service. And now, more than ever, they're fully funded. They're actually, for the first time ever, they are a line item in the state budget.
Does civil service do anything else for, like, does it handle promotions? I think I remember reading that it does something for, like, there's a list for promotions and it handles some of the arbitration about whether someone gets skipped, or I don't know if you could talk a little bit more about that.
Yep. It handles civil service not only does entry level exams, it also does promotional lists. For the police, it would be for sergeant, lieutenant, captain. For the fire, it would do for lieutenant, captain, and there are municipalities where the chief position is in civil service. So they handle all promotional exams, and the same way with the entry level. They take care of the test, the proctoring, the correcting, the making of the list, and any appeals with promotions as well.
Another important thing too is actually another part of civil service is the layoff list. So, and Ross and I talked about the other day. You know, you're Belmont's a perfect example where they're kind of in a financial situation right now. If we were in a situation that we were to have to lay people off, those officers or firefighters that are laid off automatically go to the top of the entire civil service list, and before any other department is able to hire, they have to offer those people a position. So if basically they fall under unfortunate circumstances from their department, they'll get picked up by another department. Belmont actually, a number of years ago, it ended up not working out. I forget exactly what the reason why, but was going to actually pick up a couple officers from a department that was laid off. I think it ended up being they lived too far away and they just all bought houses, so they weren't able to move close enough to actually fit the residency requirement we had at the time. But and that's also how the fire department actually got one of the first female firefighter they had from Arlington. She was laid off from Arlington, and then Belmont picked her up. I think it was Ross 20 years ago, and she retired recently. So
she lasted 20. Unfortunately, she was injured pretty bad in her back, and it was something that she had to retire from. But yes, we did get our first female firefighter off a layoff list. So
I'd like to ask a question, and then I think the best way to do it is for folks on who are on the Zoom to just use the Zoom like raise your hand feature, and then I can just go down and queue you up, and you can speak. So I think if you've got questions, I'm looking at the attendees, just use the raise your hand feature, and we'll get to your question. So my question,
that's often hidden in like the reaction section, depending on your computer.
Yes, yeah. Sorry. Yes, it's in the reaction section. Great. So my question, Ross and Cory, is if you could, I think one of the things that is unique, because I've had people say to me like, well, you know, other parts of town government aren't in civil service, so like, why do we need police and fire department to be in them? And my response to them is that really being a police officer or working for the fire department, like the structures of these organizations are very different from just your average for-profit company or even your average, you know, just kind of government bureaucratic office. Like these are kind of quasi-military in structure. Your boss is not a boss. He or she is a chief. They don't ask you to do things. They give you orders. And I guess my question is, could you kind of just explain to the attendees sort of how that works, and like, you know, how the civil service as it exists just helps balance that relationship a little bit and is helpful to you just as officers just working within the police or fire department?
You want to go first, Cory?
Ross?
Yeah, I think actually you kind of hit the nail on the head basically with the beginning of it. Is that, yeah, we work in a paramilitary organization, so there's a rank structure. To actually get promoted within your department, that we talked about a little bit before, but the test is actually given by civil service. There's a number of different types of tests that you can do, which you can either just do an exam, or there's a why am I drawing a blank in the name of it? Assessment center. Thank you. And then they're actually, from the meeting that we were in the other day, they're actually one of the things they have in the legislature is actually to even tweak that a little bit and to expand and kind of make the promotional process and the way you take promotions a little bit better by offering a couple other different ways to do it. So that's something that they're trying to get done with by the end of the year. And then within that, there are ways, if you feel that you were bypassed wrongfully, you can actually appeal to civil service, and it kind of basically helps keep everything very unbiased, because everything's done by civil service and not within your department. So I think that's definitely one of the big benefits of it. So it just offers that unbiased opinion and way of doing it.
No, yeah, I totally agree. It's that form of doing tests and promotions. I'm comfortable with going to civil service and taking a test. I know there is no, lack of a better word, there's no shenanigans going on. I brought up 3 years ago the town of Wellesley and their fire chief that had numerous people with the same last name on the department. Not saying that any of those candidates didn't do well on a test, but the chief and the assistant chief were both investigated. Ethics Commission gave the Chief Delory a $10,000 fine, and he has resigned and retired. His assistant chief, who he put in charge of the hiring process and then stopping the hiring process, that hired one of Chief Delory's sons, he was also fined by the State Ethics Commission and resigned. I can't imagine that left the department in a very good morale state. You question whether someone got a job by actually doing well on a test, or was it because they knew someone? It opened up the town to lawsuits, I would have to imagine. There's going to be people that did not get a job that found out about this and now have, possibility of suing the town. And just a few weeks ago, last month in September, the chief in Braintree was found to hire his 22-year-old son, who was 58th on a list of 84 in that community. He was in the Boston Fire Academy. He got thrown out as he had a run-in with the law. Any other normal firefighter or police officer would have been fired at that point. And his father, the chief, didn't tell people. He got him into another academy. And as soon as that academy found out that he was kicked out of Boston's academy, they kicked him out right away as well. So it's things like that worry us. I'm not saying that I'm worried about Chief McIsaac or Chief DeStefano or, any of the select board members or anything like that, but you just don't know who's coming in after them. I told someone today, a town meeting member that got in touch with me. I said, in my 24 years, I've probably dealt with 3 dozen select board members, 4 police chiefs or 5 police chiefs, 4 fire chiefs, and 5 or 6 town administrators. You just don't know who's going to be there. And I'm not saying anyone's going to be a bad apple, but there are bad apples. Every job, every profession has a bad apple. And I'm not sure that I wouldn't be comfortable putting that in the hands of someone that has discretion like that, with no third party that would be that neutral balancing act. If something happened to a police officer or firefighter and we needed to appeal something, we're going to appeal to the town that just someone in the town that, just laid down some discipline that was unwarranted. There's no independent party to go to. So that makes it very difficult. The police and fire jobs, public safety are not, it's not an accountant, it's not a lawyer, it's not a finance person where you're just going to go to another company. It's not, these professions are not like that.
So, and Ross, one thing I was surprised to learn, I didn't know this, is that merely like one thing that might happen is merely by reassigning you your duties or your responsibilities, the chief could really actually take money out of your pocket, result in you actually making less money that year because of that reassignment or because of that demotion, and actually affect the amount that you earn, which I think is something that, again, if you're not working in that type of a structure, you don't think that would ever happen, right?
Right, and I know Chief McIsaac asked me this 3 years ago, and I think it was brought up the other night as well at the warrant committee meeting, is stuff like that doesn't happen under the civil service because they know that a chief would have to have documented, proven that someone had done something wrong, or that person could appeal to civil service. Without that, would be kind of like hanging in the wind. As you can tell, the departments that have come out, and whether it's the Methuen Police Department lately, where their chief hired people out of civil service, forged papers, the Wellesley chief, the Braintree chief, these things happen, and who is going to go? Where are these people going to go that may have been wronged? There is no place. And I would say for all of you that are on here, I think they put up the report from the state legislature to the legislature, from the committee to the state legislature, that just read it. There are changes coming down the pipe here, and I think the town of Belmont would do themselves a great service by waiting, seeing these changes happen. Like I said, me and Cory never said that civil service was perfect, but the state legislature, and I'll give Rep. Ken Gordon and Senator Mike Brady props. They brought this together. They brought a great committee together. They heard testimony from both sides, and they came together to find solutions. I'm going to put you on mute for a second because I'm at the firehouse and I don't want anyone to hear.
So Paul, I don't know if you have further follow-ups, but maybe we can, if not, we can open it up to questions.
Yeah, if you got questions, raise your hand.
And if not, I always have questions. Anyone who knows me knows that.
I'm just
well, and Aaron, you're not the only one, of course.
7 Slade Street, Engine 1 and Rescue 1.
Oh, I see Sheila there.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. Sorry.
Thank you very much, Paul, Judith, and Ross, and Aaron. Thanks for hosting this. It's really a wonderful opportunity. We've been hearing, Chief McIsaac talk and the select board talk, and we are not hearing the other side of the story. But Aaron, I hope that I know you said no. We're not debating this, but
I want to let you know that I absolutely mean it.
Okay, and I appreciate that.
If you have a question, please ask a question, but this is not the time to advocate in either direction.
I do have a question. So I keep hearing that other towns have left, and it's been a great thing from what we've heard from the chief. But in all of the research that I've done, it appears that the chiefs and the rank and file sort of have negotiated a plan, and then they come before town meeting and ask for town meeting support in what they are at, what they have agreed to do. And I'm not hearing that that's the process in Belmont, that the process in Belmont is we are being asked by the chief to authorize leaving civil service, and then there will be a plan. So my question to Cory is, where does this leave you if town meeting votes to leave civil service and there is no plan for you?
So we would have to impact bargain. So we'd have to negotiate all the terms that are basically affected. All the basic, everything, all the language that's in our contract that refers to civil service would have to be negotiated with the town. It's basically anything that would change that coming out of civil service would change that.
Can I add something, Aaron? So years ago, I want to say it was probably 8, 9, 10 years ago, right when Wellesley came out of civil service. I think they came out of civil service in 2012. They were kind of considered the gold standard. They had supposedly this foolproof system that kind of mimicked civil service, but gave them some wiggle room to do some things. Our prior Chief Frizzell actually put in a memorandum of agreement, or understanding, I should say, memorandum of understanding in one of our contracts, that if something ever happened to civil service, they stopped doing business, the state legislature just dropped it, we're not having a civil service department anymore, that we would follow Wellesley's plan. And I think we have shown that Wellesley's plan did not work. It does not work. And that is one of the big issues. There is no plan that's going to satisfy everyone. But I do have confidence in the state's Civil Service Committee that they've come up with ideas from both sides to move forward to improve civil service, keep the protections for the police officers and firefighters, but also make it easier for chiefs to hire, give them bigger lists, have it done quicker at no cost to the towns.
Aaron, may I ask a follow-up question?
Sure.
So Cory, back to then you would have to negotiate a plan. What happens if it appears that you can't negotiate a plan before it comes before town meeting? So if town meeting votes to leave civil service, now the rank and file is left to negotiate with the town a plan. What happens if it becomes a stalemate? I don't know what's going to happen to you all.
So basically we couldn't come to an agreement. It would go to arbitration, and then would be voted on by ruled on by an arbiter. But that, I mean, we're talking, it could potentially be months, if not longer. Years. I was being optimistic. Months, if not years, of kind of just waiting. Not only waiting to actually negotiate. I'm sorry, not just waiting to negotiate, but actually waiting if we do come to an impasse and we can't, then we'd have to go, like I said, before the JLMC, in an arbiter and have a ruling that way. So it could take some time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I see Brian Eiler's hand.
Yes, thanks. I just want to say first, I'm almost completely ignorant on the role of civil service in fire and police hiring. And also in my limited number of interactions with the Belmont Police and Fire, I am super impressed with their professionalism and friendliness. So I have two questions. One is, in the civil service system, what sort of constraints do hiring managers, a fire chief or police chief, have on choosing a candidate in terms of personality and temperament? I know, with all the developments and policing over the last couple of years, that's become an important, or should be an important element in hiring, certainly the police. Are police chiefs constrained in terms of, can they use personality and temperament and that sort of thing when choosing somebody? Are they constrained that, okay, this guy's at the top of the list, I got to take him?
So when civil service after an exam is done and a list is made up, if the town of Belmont had one opening that they're trying to fill, Chief McIsaac would call civil service and say, I need to hire one person. Can you give me a list? The equation that they use to decide how many people are on a list is 2n plus 1, which is 2 times the number of positions that you have available plus 1. So if there was one opening, there would be 3 names on the list. Chief McIsaac would bring those 3 people in. They would have an interview. They would sign paperwork. The chief would interview them. He would look at the top guy, and if there was a problem with the top person, he would move on to a second. He would have to write, a summary to civil service saying, I interviewed the top guy. He, for these reasons, we felt he wasn't a good fit for us, and they would move on to the second. They would, if the first guy felt like he was aggrieved, he would go to civil service and, appeal the decision for him to be skipped. Like I said, there was 606 appeals to civil service in a 15-year span, and 80% of them went in favor of the municipality. So if the chief writes up his reasons for skipping someone in a proper fashion, more than likely they're going to agree to it, and he would be able to move on to the next person on the list.
Okay. Thanks. And the second question is, there are unions for both fire and police. Now, and I think, I'm sorry, the police officer in the meeting here spoke to this a little bit, but doesn't your union contract, or can't it, protect you from mistreatment or other management shenanigans that might happen? Isn't that, I know with the school system, the school union, the teachers union, it can be very active and can very clearly delineate what kind of actions management can take, and so on and so forth. Can't that be the same way, or is it the same way with the police and fire?
Yes and no. So it depends. So you could, when it comes to promotional issues, hiring issues, that's more where civil service will handle. You can also appeal discipline issues. With post, you can no longer basically. So Chief McIsaac has said a few times. So if you're terminated, you can't appeal that to civil service anymore. That's a matter that goes to post, and if you're terminated, you're terminated. Your certification is pulled. But if it is just some other run-of-the-mill type of discipline, yes, you can appeal it basically through an arbiter with your contract, or you can appeal it through civil service. It gives you basically there's 2 different avenues to do it, and it would depend on the way that you chose to do it, and what the issue was. But when it comes to if you were skipped for a promotion or something like that is where you would appeal to civil service directly.
Right, but I mean, isn't if you're not in civil service anymore and don't have access to that system of appeal or rules, can that be written into a union contract? I'm sure it makes the contract a heck of a lot.
Well, that's something that we've been saying. So that's something that you would have to negotiate that kind of language into the contract, and that's basically one of the things that we would do is we would like to negotiate. Basically, if we were to come out, we would like to negotiate that kind of language previously, before coming out, so you kind of know what you're coming out to, and you know what the system is. So, but yes, it is basically there is an avenue to do it now. But as for the promotional part of it, it's something that would have
negotiations have not
put
happened
into the contract.
And those negotiations have not happened. Right. So we're being asked to come out. None of those conversations have happened. There's no agreement. There's no structure. There's no language about any of that stuff.
Correct.
Aaron, I see your hand raised.
I raised my own hand. My question is about, so I think the valid reason for wanting to leave civil service as it stood before the state's efforts was that it prevented us from hiring diversity that reflects our community. And so that's been a stated goal. And I noticed that a number of the towns that have withdrawn in the past have had the same goal. And so I'm curious, I noticed that in the report that Paul has linked to in the chat, just so everybody knows, that came out in March 2022, they highlighted that Wellesley had that stated goal in 2012, and that 9 years later, they had the exact same number of candidates match their community. So I'm curious, my understanding is that the commission has requested data, and I have not been able to read that. I'm curious if you can provide information about, like, does it work in civil service?
I can tell you that. So, by the way, anything that I am telling you tonight can be fact checked by any of the committee's hearings. They're all on YouTube. They're all there. Like I said, I gave verbal and written testimony to this commission. So anything that I'm telling you can be fact checked by watching any of the commission hearings on YouTube. So yes, when they had both sides of the commission, those for coming out of civil service and those for staying in, they sent out, I think it was Rep. Higgins was in charge of this. She sent out a survey to 35 communities that had recently either come out of civil service or were never in civil service. Of those 35 communities, they got 8 returned. At that point, we were like 8 or 9 months into the hearings, and Rep. Higgins had asked the Chair Gordon and Chair Brady that she needed more time to get information from these other towns that had come out of civil service. And at that point, Rep. Gordon kind of, put the gavel down and said, no, there is no more time. They've had 8 or 9 months to do this. The reason why they're not giving you their numbers is because it doesn't back up their arguments. And that's what they found. They found the towns that came out of civil service claiming that they were able to hire quicker and diversify their departments just wasn't so. And just one of the other reasons why this committee had made those recommendations to the state legislature to fully fund them and go the way they are. Like I said earlier, the 2 last police exams had a 40% and 41% diverse pool of people that took the test. The armed forces, where we get our veterans, 40% of them are of diverse in nature. There's no easier way to diversify a department than either veterans or, as you can see, as the police right now, their last 2 tests have been quite diverse. I don't think you will get that in as I was told by someone, a town like Belmont or Wellesley, or some of the suburban towns where the home prices are over $1 million. You are more than likely going to be lucky to get 5 or 10% of a diverse candidate pool to take the test in those towns. I would have to agree with that.
Mary Lewis, I see your hand raised.
Yeah, thanks for this. I have a question that might be more appropriate for Thursday's warrant briefing. I'm not sure if this can be answered tonight, but my question stems from a little bit of confusion about what town meeting is actually doing. Are we voting to start a process, or are we voting to actually leave? Because when the gentlemen here tonight have been speaking about how if town meeting votes yes, then they might have to go into arbitration or what have you. I'm just wondering about the process. Are we actually, is it a done deal once town meeting votes and we're out of civil service, or is it just authorizing us to leave after negotiations take place? Thanks.
We're being as town meeting members, we're being asked to vote to leave civil service with no agreement at all from the unions. I mean, no, they won't have.
That's not the question I'm asking, Ms. Finley. I'm asking, does the vote for town meeting actually make us leave, or does it authorize us to begin a process of negotiation?
It makes us leave.
That's my understanding as well, is it withdraws us from the civil service, and everything else is up to the town administrator and the unions to negotiate everything after that. Is that, I think I got that right?
Yes.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. I will ask again on Thursday if just to make sure that they say the same thing.
Yeah, that's correct. So we're out, and then we just have to negotiate the details basically afterwards.
Are there other questions? I have one more question if you'll entertain it. Which is, you know, if we were, I mean, my understanding is, well, my understanding is that there are things that are within the town's control. So one of the big motivations for leaving is recruitment, finding new candidates to fill open positions. Our town, like many other towns, has open positions, both on the police department. Are there things that we could be doing absent leaving civil service to open that pipeline a little bit and bring more prospective candidates into Belmont while staying within civil service that maybe we're not doing?
So the preferences that we put on limit our pools. Belmont falls under, they have an upper age limit to take a civil service exam. You have to be under the age of 32 to take the exam. There are towns in civil service that the upper age limit is 39. There's other towns and cities that there is no upper age limit. There civil service law states that a candidate, someone that takes a job as a police officer and firefighter in Massachusetts has to live within 15 miles of the community that they serve in. As you all know, the affordability of living within 15 miles of Belmont is rather difficult. Most of us live literally as far away as you can under the 15 miles. I think the police have actually is 20 miles, but the town can move that to 50 miles if they wanted to. Chapter 150 of the Civil Service Law, they could say, hey, from now on, you just have to be within 50 miles of Belmont.
So that's the town and unions can reach an agreement that changes that.
The town can bring that up and we could say, sure, absolutely. So like I say, Mr. Epstein hit it right on the head the other night. He said exactly what civil service does. Anything else that's a part of any preference that's on there is all town initiated. It's not civil service. It's not the unions. It's the town. So they can make the pool as big as they want. They just, need to, take the preferences off with civil service.
Are there other questions from town meeting members?
But by the way, that's one of the suggestions from the Civil Service Commission thing is to expand, or even there has been talk of getting rid of it. Just you have to live in Massachusetts. So there are things in the pipeline to address those situations.
Paul, I have another question. It's getting a tiny bit into the weeds, but so you made an example. You said that the civil service exam is $75, and when you were describing it, you talked about that Wellesley, as an example, has an exam that has a similar fee, right? Yep. Setting the fees aside, when someone comes and takes that Wellesley exam, does it only apply to Wellesley, or would it apply to like a group of towns that use the same vendor? Like, how do those things tend to work for towns that have left civil service? That makes sense.
Usually,
you don't know, that's fine.
It's just usually for the town. I think Isaac said that there was some that were a couple of towns or 3 towns.
It depends on the company that used to actually do the tests. Some of them are individual towns, and some of them are like a pooled exam. Okay. I believe Marlboro does a pooled one. I don't know who they. I might be wrong. I know
It's like
it's some kind of
whatever municipalities use that vendor theoretically might be within the same pool, right?
Correct. Yes. Yeah.
Okay. All right, great. That's just something I was just thinking about how that would work, and like thinking about the different fee structures as a barrier, as you mentioned. I'm like wondering how that it's like the common application for college has changed how people apply, right? And I'm curious about how that plays into this. Okay.
I believe, and I may be wrong, but I believe though, if you're using the so if you're in a pool, you could be pooled with. So it's not necessarily towns that are close with each other. So your pool could be somewhere that's out west. Just everybody that uses that same company. You could also be right next to each other. It's just it depends on who you.
Matt Taylor, I see your hand raised. Go ahead.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep.
Great. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the discussion. My questions are going to kind of come from I've been reading through the Needham documents, their collective bargaining agreements, and some of their process. They had, for context, they had voted to agree to negotiate in good faith in 2021, I believe it was, and then came to town meeting in 2022 with the actual proposal. So I guess this is kind of a two-part question, I guess. Has the union offered or be willing to offer to sign a memo committing to negotiate in good faith on leaving the civil service, perhaps with the idea that we'd come back to town meeting in the spring with a more unified front? And before you answer, I also have the same question, like, has the town asked or offered this as well? So I'm not trying to find like one more side.
I mean, if we have to, if the town wants to negotiate with us, we have to negotiate in good faith. So it's just part of the agreement anyway. So to sign something really doesn't matter if basically if we were to come out. It's basically it's your job as a e-board for a department to negotiate. And same to the town, you're supposed to negotiate fairly in a good faith. I honestly, I wouldn't, for my union, I wouldn't sign something just blind, like to say I agree to negotiate this, going down the road. I would have to have something in front of me that says what it is before kind of putting all the eggs in that basket.
Yeah, no,
and you really can't negotiate something. I mean, you're essentially agreeing to do by signing something like that, you're essentially agreeing to do something before actually finding out kind of how it's going to affect you. So it's not really a great idea.
Yeah, what I liked about Needham, or at least seemed to be a collaborative process, where they stated up front that they agreed on the goal, and then they would work together how to get there, which then brought the town and the unions together.
Right, and we're perfectly willing to work with the town and trying to come together. But as for signing something saying that, it's just not something that we would do.
I see. Okay, but what I read from Needham, they had signed that preemptively as at least a show of direction. There are some gaps in civil service protections. Would the union consider it a positive change in working conditions to have, if we developed a local system that addressed some of these gaps?
Let me just go back really quick, Matt, on the Needham issue. They passed something at town meeting. It had to go to
what?
Had to go to the state legislature because they have to come out the same way that they came into civil service. And as of right now, by what I'm told, their hearing was the other day with 2 other towns, and I am told it was put to committee. They do not have any appetite for towns leaving civil service right now because they just put $4 million into it. So that is an issue, and I'm trying to get clarification on that. I reached out to my legislative agent for the professional firefighters of Massachusetts to find out specifically, but I know that hearing was the other day, and I'm not sure if it passed or not.
Okay, that wasn't anything. I don't understand how that's related to what I asked.
Oh, well, you mentioned Needham, so they could have come to an agreement at the town meeting, but if it's not passed in the state legislature, it's null and void.
Then it sounds like town meeting is voting to begin a process that needs to be voted at the state legislative level.
I'd have to look in Belmont's. I know they came into
Belmont joined the civil service, I believe, was in 1915, a little over 100 years ago, by a vote of town meeting.
Right.
Yeah. So Matt, I think what we would be doing is petitioning the state legislature, has a commission that deals with this, to withdraw. So basically what we're doing is approving a petition withdraw.
So does that mean that town meeting is being asked, unlike what was stated earlier? I think this is a really important point to clarify, and now I'm confused. Because earlier, something different was emphatically stated, but it now sounds like town meeting is being asked to vote to begin a process rather than making a final decision, because we still have to petition the legislator at the state level.
I think maybe we have to define the word, what we all mean by process. And I think there may be two different definitions here. One would be to withdraw from the civil, if I understand this correctly, to withdraw from the civil service as it's being currently proposed. Town meeting would be asked to vote, and if it passed, a petition would then go to the state legislature essentially for approval. So it's a two-step deal, if that maybe instead of the word process. I think the process that some of the others are talking about is the entire process of how do you negotiate what exactly will happen when civil service disappears, should that happen. That won't happen with this vote for town meeting. And maybe, Paul, you want to add to what I've said and be more clear.
Right, Matt. So for example,
I thought this was an information session to hear from our firefighters and police officers. And this is starting to sound different than that. Like, they're not answering my question. Instead, we have town meeting members describing something and I guess trying to provide different definitions of words. You also omitted the negotiation step when describing it as a two-step process. I'm just trying to understand what's going on.
When you're invoking something that I said or Judith said earlier, then please give us the opportunity to clarify what we meant, okay, without impugning us, okay? So to echo what Judith said, the question that was asked before, as I interpreted it, I think Judith did as well, is by voting to withdraw from civil service, are we voting to begin a process in which the town and the unions then, figure out all the replacements for the things that civil service offers? And then if they're not able to do that, well, then we haven't left civil service because they weren't able to do that. And the answer to that is no, that we vote to withdraw from civil service. We have indicated that as a town, we're withdrawing from civil service. And then it falls to the town and the unions to figure out how that's going to work. There is no comeback to say, well, that didn't happen, and so we're back to the status quo, as I understand it. So that was what I was saying, and I think what Judith meant as well, in terms of what does it mean when we vote to withdraw as town members.
To test my understanding, is the claim here that if town meeting votes to leave civil service, the town is now obligated to petition the state to leave civil service and must do that?
I have not heard that in any of the information sessions that I have attended, either the select board meeting or the warrant committee meeting. So that's news to me, but if other people have, I know Mr. Epstein's on the line and Mr. Palillo, if they have information on the subsequent steps after withdrawing, I'd invite them to clarify. But I have not heard that before in any of the information sessions I've been to.
And it might also be a good question to put to town council, Mr. Hall, for true clarity on exactly what would ensue. I think it's complicated. And it sounds like, as Ross noted, it is maybe further complicated by the desires of the legislature to not hear those things. And if you read through that report, they also may request a plan, right? So it may be that the requirements of that petition at the state level will be different than what we expect right now. So I think that it's a tricky question to answer, and I'm certainly not qualified. So I would suggest we could ask it on Thursday. Maybe Mr. Hall will be there. If not, at town meeting, I'd love to know before town meeting, but we can also try to look into that in the meantime.
Okay. A number of hands. Marie, you had your hand up first, and then
Ira. Can I ask my second question that was cut off and kind of derailed by this? It's just that there's some gaps in civil service protections. Could I hear from our union representatives, would they consider it a positive change in working conditions if we could work together to develop a local system that would address these gaps? I'm looking to improve protections where maybe civil service doesn't cover them.
If you could specify what gaps that would help.
I think there's areas where things are not are discretionary locally that maybe our employees would like to see improved, and perhaps we could add local policies and procedures that actually shore those up and give our employees the support and avenues for asking questions or having something reconsidered that don't currently go through civil service.
We do have a process, Mr. Taylor. We have a grievance process where if someone feels aggrieved by something in the contract, they would, in the case of the fire department, they would come to the e-board. They would file a grievance. We would discuss it as an e-board and whether or not to move forward to go to the next step of the grievance procedure, which would be to the chief of department. If we went to the chief of department and made an argument with our grievance, he would either say, I agree, yes, you were aggrieved, and fix it, or he would deny it, and then it would go to the town administrator. And that's the process. And I've never gone that far, but I'm not sure. I'd have to take a look at it really quick. If the town administrator denied it, it would either go to the select board or we would go to arbitration.
I see. And do our police officers have a similar process?
Yeah, it's pretty much the same process for both sides. But
Officer Cory, I think you'd mentioned earlier very early on tonight that kind of one of the challenges with the timing was making sure our compensation for our employees was competitive to, I think retention and hiring is hard everywhere. We see this across a lot of our town departments. Could you touch upon, what it would take or what the union sense is it would take to help Belmont, retain and compete for the high quality officers we all would like to have in our community?
I think you might have misunderstood what I said. I said in order for it to work, it has to be a non-civil service department. You would have to be competitive with the other non-civil service departments surrounding you, because it kind of the hiring pool, it allows the candidates to kind of go to essentially whichever department that they so choose. And I think it would be natural for the candidates to just want to go to a higher paying department. So if you're not kind of on par with one of the higher paying ones, then basically what you'll see is all the candidates go to those versus excuse me. So that was kind of what I meant by that.
Yeah, no, I deeply feel that concern. I don't want that to happen for our community. Do you have a sense of what it would take Belmont to be on par or even better compared to these other non-civil service communities?
I mean, we're still a civil service community right now. Like I said, it would have to be basically somewhere in the structure of some of those other departments, I would think.
So I think about 3 minutes.
Is that what you're asking me? I don't know that I understand. I don't know that I understand the question you're asking me.
Sorry, I thought it sounded like we might need to raise pay for our officers if we were to leave civil service in order to be competitive with other communities
Right,
and
correct.
their police
Are you
departments.
asking what those other departments, the non-civil service departments, what they're making? Is that your question?
Yeah, or what does it take us to, look, we're as residents, we're the largest employer in Belmont. We employ more than 1,000 people in our town departments. And, when I hear, I want to make sure that we're good employers. And so I'm trying to understand the nature of the decision in front of us. And, if, what would it take to take care of you? I guess is another way I might word my question.
I don't think that's really so much a fair question. So what would it take to take care of us is, as we said before, the police, the fire departments aren't looking. We're not sitting here going, we need a raise or anything like that. That's not what this is about. We're saying if you want to take us out of civil service in order to actually get candidates outside, in order to get candidates for a non-civil service department, you have to be kind of competitive with some of the higher paid departments. So you would have to be on a pay scale similar to them. It's not us sitting here saying we need a raise or anything like that. It's if you came out, you would just have to be competitive with them. So I think kind of the way you're asking it creates two different questions. So
okay,
some of the higher paid non-civil service departments are I think Lexington's probably one of the higher ones right now. So you would have to be Burlington is another one, Reading's another one. So you have to kind of be in a kind of pay scale similar to theirs.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful context, and I didn't mean to put you on the spot or anything. I really appreciate
no problem. That's why we're here.
Your thoughts and your answers. Thank you.
Good questions. Thank you. Marie Warner, I see your hand raised. You've been patient. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Thank you for acknowledging me, and thank you for organizing this. It's very helpful. I have a question to clarify, without getting too much in the weeds, what it would take to eliminate or broaden the age restriction and the mileage restriction. Does that have to go to town meeting? Is that something that must be negotiated with union and administration? And follow on to that, if this has been an obstacle, why have we approached it? Have we attempted to do it before?
I think it would take town to probably talk with us and say, hey, we are having a difficult time getting an adequate number of applicants from the civil service list because of age and mileage. If someone comes in and they say, hey, you have to live within 15 miles. I think Chief McIsaac brought it up the other night. He had someone from Amesbury or something that wanted to come there, but he couldn't afford to live in the area. So I think just take them to come to us and say, hey, we want to do this. And I personally, I can't speak definitively because I don't make unilateral decisions for my members. But I don't think they would have an issue if we allow the town to raise the upper age limit for someone taking a civil service exam, or if someone wanted to live from 50 miles away. I don't think we would have a problem with it. But
I think I would have to double check, and I think the age limit can actually just be voted by town meeting. And then as for the residency, we actually expanded ours. That can just be done in negotiations.
There you go.
So perhaps, well, that's meaningful because it could impact whether there's an amendment to this article. Thanks very much.
Okay. Thanks, Marie. Ira.
Thank you. It seems like the people that are most impacted, whether we're in civil service or outside of civil service, are the police force and the fire department. Has there been a poll that would indicate the feelings of the members of those two departments on if they had a choice, they would prefer we stay or we leave? And do they feel strongly about that?
Has there been a poll done by the town or internally.
No, just, yeah, internally, I'm just trying to understand, hey, what's the view of most of the police force? What's the view of most of the fire department in terms of this question?
I think that for the fire department, I think a vast majority, an overwhelming majority, would like to stay in civil service.
Cory, is that similar in the police department? I think you're on mute, Cory.
You're on mute, Cory.
Try this again. Yeah, we're in the kind of the same boat as the fire department. I think we've said it a number of times, is that it's not so much that we're not willing to come out, but we haven't seen what it would look like for us to come out. And that's kind of the issue. It's the unknown. If we were able to kind of sit down and negotiate, that's what we would like to do, and be able to look and see what their plan is for us to come out, then I can present that to my body and Ross, the same. But we don't know what it's going to look like now, so that kind of creates an issue.
I think with the changes coming with the state legislature, it would be nice to let those play out, and see how it works, so we could have the best of both worlds. And if a year or two it's not working out, then we revisit and sit down together and try to come up with something. But I think that's what the state legislature did. That they came with both sides. They got ideas from both sides. They made recommendations and they're implementing them. And I think it would behoove the town to wait it out and see how it works.
Yeah, it definitely does. The plan that they've kind of come up with and what they're going to put forward definitely does, I think, kind of addresses the needs of both sides of this. I agree with what Ross said. I think at this point, if the town meeting does end up voting us out, and then we have to sit and we have to negotiate and we have to come up with a plan anyways, that may take a year, 2 years, 3 years, then I don't know what the harm would be in waiting to see how things pan out once the state changes how things are done. So
thank you.
So I see no more hands, and we are at over the time we promised, and I like to stay close unless there's any final questions. I wanted to quickly plug, just to remind all the town meeting members, that there's the League of Women Voters info briefing on Thursday. I'm posting.
Oh, we lost you, Aaron.
We lost you. You're on mute, Aaron.
Oh, I muted instead of sending. That was perfect. I'm going to try to post with the chat about the. There it is. I did it. The link to the Belmont town website about that, just so remember that. And I think if you have questions that we haven't been able to answer with clarity tonight, that might be an opportunity. I can't remember if Mr. Hall tends to attend those or not, our town council, but he definitely will be at town meeting. So,
yes.
I think George Hall does.
Yeah. The other thing is, this is being recorded, and we will be circulating a link to the recording. I'll probably send it out through if the town clerk will share it with the town meeting members, so folks who weren't here can view it, and include some of the links to the report as well. So. Other than that, if there are no further questions, I would like to thank Ross and Cory for taking time out of your Tuesday evening and coming here and sharing your thoughts and opinions with us. I think it really was very, very helpful.
Thank you, Rick. Thanks for having us, and thanks for
we
putting
appreciate
together.
your time and all the questions from all the town meeting members and warrant committee members and so forth. We appreciate you taking the time to hear us employees out. That's much appreciated.
And thanks to town meeting members and others who joined for tuning in and sharing your thoughts. Really appreciate it. Oh, Judith, do you have something you want to say?
No, I managed to raise my hand by mistake.
Okay. All right.
It happens periodically.
Happy Tuesday, everybody, and thanks so much. Look for the link to the video and look forward to seeing you all at town meeting.
Yeah,
and the League of Women Voters.
Thanks again.
Thank you all. Good night.
Thanks.